Hello and welcome to MGoRadio 11.8. Brian isn't here to get the episode number wrong because he's not feeling well, so I'm joined by Alex Drain. Say hi, Alex.
Hello.
And I'm Seth Fisher. We're going to go right to the sponsors. We want to thank Underground Printing for starting this and making it all possible. Stop by and pick up some gear. Check them out at ugpmichiganapparel.com or check out our selection of shirts on the mgoblogstore.com. Our associate sponsors are Peak Wealth Management, Matt Demarest, Realtor and Lender, Ann Arbor Elder Law, Michigan Logred, Human Element, Sharon's Heating and Air Conditioning, the Sklar Brothers, Winewood Organics, Community Pest Solutions, Radicate Oral Surgery, Long Road Distillers, and Signalwire, where we're recording this. I also want to give a shout out to my brother recovering from getting a few stents last night. He's a Michigan State fan, Michigan State graduate, was a Michigan grad before that, Michigan fan before that. So we're hoping this is going to be a great big blowout right from the start, so he doesn't have to feel anything about this game whatsoever.
That would certainly be optimal, but these games can get a little spooky, so you never know.
Oh man, the game nearest, I guess this is going to be next week. The game nearest Halloween just has a history of being weird for Michigan. But I feel like this one, a lot of Michigan fans are going up to East Lansing. A lot of Michigan State fans seem to be checked out on the Jonathan Smith era, which I would say is premature, but every fan base is a little weird, and that was always kind of an awkward fit. Where are you with Michigan State right now?
Well, it's an interesting kind of check-in on them because a year ago we played them about the same point in the season, and things were going pretty well at that point. They were coming off a really good win against Iowa. At that time, they were 4-3 on the season, seemed to be on track to make a bowl game and kind of exceeding expectations at the time. And since that point, it's gone pretty poorly. They finished that year 1-4, including the loss to Michigan, and they are now 3-4 this season. But when you boil it down to Big Ten games, it's an even grimmer picture. 1-8 in the last 9 Big Ten games.
Yeah.
And this team is not very good. They haven't played very well this season. And I am not really seeing a lot of players being developed, which is concerning. And the state of Michigan State's recruiting is also pretty concerning. And just makes me wonder whether it's possible to steer this ship around.
So last year at Michigan, it was actually a really close game. And
yeah.
There were a lot of Michigan reasons for that. We detailed, right? Michigan didn't have a quarterback. They're running Alex Orji until the point where they finally finished it with the end, but they had their own offensive problems. And then I was very critical last year about Wink Martindale at that point in the season. I think that was the moment where I was like, I'm done with this guy. And then obviously he turned it around. But the other thing about that game, and I went back over it again, is I think that was the first game that I remember them really kind of pulling the reins back on Aiden Childs. And we were surprised that they didn't just kind of like, hey, you got this talent. He is wild, right? But he can do some wild things. Why would they not cut him loose and try to, RNG their way to a win against Michigan? And then they kind of did that the rest of the year, right?
Yeah, that was the start of the change in Childs. And it's an interesting thing as we talk about the offense, because at that time, their offense was not rated very highly in SP+, largely because of the turnovers.
Right.
And Childs at that time, I think he had 6 or 7 touchdowns on the year and like 9 interceptions, which when you look at that, you're like, oh boy, that's really bad. But the tape was, he had a lot of good moments. He had a lot of good things. And that downfield connection with Nick Marsh was really the most dangerous thing about their offense. And so what you've seen since then is they've reined Childs in. He's not throwing deep anymore. The turnovers have gone down. But is it better? And that's the biggest question, is that they've improved in SP+ because they're not turning it over all the time. But just in terms of like, I come into this game and just wondering, what is the dangerous thing about this offense? What can they really do that scares you? And I don't really see a lot, honestly. It's just turned into like they've gone from a boomer bust offense that was either just killing you or handing you the game to an offense that just doesn't really threaten in any major way and doesn't have the ability to kind of go out and win games, which is particularly what they need this year when the defense is in the state it's in. And that's kind of the the odd trade-off. But is Childs a better quarterback than he was a year ago? I don't really think so, and that's the concerning part. Is you just there's too many players on this team where it doesn't feel like they've gotten any better, and that the kind of the regime has been stonewalled now.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that quarterbacks stall out is actually the main reason. The number one reason quarterbacks always stall out is offensive line, and that's been a problem at Michigan State for long enough that you and I were kind of going through the old opponent roster, and just kind of like how many scions can we put on an offensive line? You held back on a couple of these guys, but I'm going to put it up for the people watching on the video right now. There's some trouble on the Michigan State offensive line that's been kind of giving them, I guess it's been hard for them to kind of develop Childs because he's always just got to get rid of the ball or get out of there on his own, or just the dinky passes because of these guys.
Yeah, it's definitely a concern. I didn't realize until coming into this week and doing the research how injured MSU is on both sides of the ball. They've got a lot of guys that they're missing. And the offensive line in particular, this was a unit that last year was pretty bad. They come into this year, and I was concerned about some losses on the other side of the ball. But one thing I thought was, okay, I think they should take a step forward in the offensive line. They've got guys coming back. They added a good transfer center. There was reason to believe that they could make some marginal gains in that positional group. And I don't know if that happened because they've just been without a lot of guys. So they lose Ashton Lipo, who was the starter at right tackle, I believe. He's out for the year. Stanton Rammel at left tackle has been down since USC. At the time, they said he would be gone a month. This is about a month. I haven't heard any updates, so I don't know what's going on there. And then Christian Phillips, who was one of their guards, went down in the UCLA game, and he left that one on crutches and in a boot. And then there's been some weird stuff going on with the injuries because, like, Jonathan Smith then during the week after UCLA was like, oh, I'm feeling good about him. And then he didn't play last week. And there were some guys on defense where I look it up, and like 3 weeks ago, he's quoted as saying the guy was day-to-day, and he hasn't played since, and there's been no update. So I don't know.
My Sparty family members have a theory on that. Now they're down on Jonathan Smith more than I am, right? I've been the one who's like,
Sure.
you guys, he's fine. Just give him some time. He built into Oregon State in a day. But what they're saying is that they think some of these guys are injury, quote, like, if you get an injury and then you're getting close to only playing 4 games this year, maybe preserve a year of eligibility if you're not going to be playing for state next year. And they think that the program feels like they've kind of given up on the season. And if you have an opportunity to kind of preserve a year, especially if you're injured, why would go out there and play and hurt yourself more when this is the season that Sparty's in right now, which is pretty dire, man. Like, that's for year 2. Like, that's not where you're gonna be, right?
It's a bad place to be, but I don't think it's like a crazy theory. But with those injuries, you've gone from a positional group that already had questions, and now you're moving to, okay, we're putting a lot of the backups to the guys that had questions on the field. And that has just created a really bad situation. I charted their game last week, or from the game last week against Indiana, which was an interesting one to do because they did surprisingly well against Indiana. They didn't get a ton of points, but they drove the field a decent bit. They had 300-plus yards against a defense that is ostensibly elite. And even with that, there were still just a lot of concerning pass pro moments in that game, and they can't run block at all. So you got Connor Moore playing at left tackle now. He was at right tackle previously. There were multiple plays where he didn't get a hand on an edge rusher. They had to bring Rustin Young in to play right tackle. He wasn't any good. They switched him out for Rakeem Johnson midway through. I didn't think that made a big difference. Caleb Carter is on the field because of the Phillips injury. He's not very good. Gavin Brocious was close to straddling that line. I mean, the only guy that is in a decent spot is the transfer center, Matt Golden from Wake Forest. He was a pretty decent player in the ACC. I didn't love his game against Indiana, but he's graded out in PFF's numbers pretty well this year, and there's enough track record there to think he's not the culprit of the situation. But when you've got 3-4 starters that are in trouble spot territory across the line, it's just going to be a problem. And so that steered MSU towards screens in the Indiana game, which had effectiveness and a lot of short passing, but it's totally neutralized the run game, and it's put Childs under a lot of heat, exposes him to a lot of potential sacks, and it's just really hard to imagine cobbling together a very good offense when this is the offensive line you're dealing with.
Yeah, and you notice that, the guys they're starting, of them, Matt Goldman is a redshirt senior, right? A fifth-year guy who played for Wake Forest. So he's at least a Power 4 caliber player, right? Gavin Brocious, not. I was surprised you didn't sign him. He had some issues, I thought, against Indiana. But then you go Connor Moore, he's Montana State transfer, right? Caleb Carter, Western Carolina. That's not Eastern Carolina. Western Carolina transfer, right? And the other guys we're talking about, Rustin Young's a redshirt freshman, like the Rakeem Johnson's a redshirt freshman. Like, these are not guys you would expect to be any good to play right now. So they were thin on the offensive line to begin the season, and then this kind of all happened. And it makes sense why they're doing screens. What didn't make sense to me, really, was why Indiana was blitzing them so much at the start of that game, which made me like, I was watching that and thinking, oh God, I hope somebody tells Wink not to do this, right? That was kind of that was the game. That was like, Michigan State had 2 drives before Indiana's like, let's just play 4 and sit back on these guys.
Yeah, and those 2 drives were effective. They got, I think, a field goal and then a touchdown on those first 2 drives, which constituted most of the scoring they got in the game. There were a ton of screens in this one. I charted Childs with, I think it was like 11. Now that includes passes behind the line of scrimmage. That's a bucket for all non-downfield passes, but a number of them were design screens and just kind of get it out quick. And Indiana was also playing really soft on the outside. Like, they were just giving up 5-7 yards to Nick Marsh and Amari Kelly, the 2 wide receivers for Michigan State, and that just, it gave Michigan State too many free yards, I feel like. But there were also some busts over the middle. It wasn't Indiana's best day, and Michigan State took advantage of what was given to them. I will say that I think Kelly and Marsh are a decent duo at a receiver. Like, Marsh is certainly got a ton of talent. I think it's not the best utilization of his skills to not have him going deep, because we saw that was what he really had the potential to flash last season. And Kelly, they got from Middle Tennessee. He's solid. They don't really have a lot of receiving options beyond that. Jack Velling, their tight end they brought from Oregon State, he's kind of disappointed, I feel like, since he came over with Jonathan Smith, because he was an all Pac-12 selection his last year there, and he's just kind of been a guy at MSU. But they did a lot of bootlegs and rollouts, just little dump-offs to the tight end running for 5 yards, that kind of stuff. Just anything to get the ball out quickly and circumvent the pass rush coming at Childs' face.
Okay, so things for us to be worried about. I'm not really worried about their offensive line. I am not really worried about Childs just turning into an NFL quarterback all of a sudden. What I do worry about is if, all right, and I worry about Wink, obviously, right? This is not the game to put 3 tackles on the field. This is not the game to, like, be blitzing. Like, we had a good game last week. Hopefully this sticks, right? Because I think you can rush 4 against these guys, no problem. They're not really going to kind of kill you in the run game. I do worry a little bit about, Zeke Berry against Nick Marsh, if they want to throw it downfield. They've proved last week, Washington, I'm sure Michigan State was watching, that, Boston had some couple passes into double coverage where he just beat the guys, right? So you're going to have to be careful of that. And, that whole thing we're talking about at the beginning with how they use Childs, right? If you cut him loose, he's going to throw 3 interceptions and throw 3 incredible touchdowns. Well, if you score 21 points from those 3 incredible touchdowns, that's probably worth more than 3 interceptions where you give Michigan good field position, right? Like, Michigan's not been finishing drives this year. So that's my concern, is that, number one, Wink wants to go back to his bag and show off a little bit. Just, I hope everyone still remembers USC. I'm not. We're not letting off the pressure right there. And then number 2 is just, if Michigan State wants to really cut it loose, I think that Marsh can actually make some plays, even if he's covered, right? There's no schematic response to things like that. And also, Aiden Childs, they get him out on the edge, and he can break some tackles, and Michigan's had some trouble tackling. Do you have any other concerns besides that? Those valid concerns, or am I just talking myself into being worried about a game that's not really a concern?
Yeah, no, I think those are like the main talking points. Like, this is a game where Michigan should be able to just play for and be totally fine with it. Simply because the run game, I'm not really concerned about. They've struggled to run the ball all year. They came into the season with some big question marks at running back, some really untested guys. Mekhi Frazier's their starter, but Brandon Tullis and Elijah Taught-Oliver are the other two backs they give carries to. None of them, I think the highest yards per carry is 4.1 among those three guys. It's pretty grim. You should be able to get pressure rushing for, but containing Childs and tackling Childs is going to be a big story for me. You can't let him sort of run all over you. And he didn't really against Michigan last year. Like, he had some runs, but it wasn't like a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
But that to me isn't a big thing, because we've seen this season some sack attempts that turned into, runs for the other team. We remember the blown sack in the Nebraska game, those kinds of things. And Childs is as slippery as it gets. That's his whole thing, just kind of being able to juke and avoid and break off and spin off from tacklers. So that's going to be a big area of emphasis. But I like the mention of the Washington game, simply because I think there are some parallels here, in the sense that you have like a mobile quarterback, you have a good sort of downfield receiver, you have unspectacular tight ends, and then a wobbly offensive line. Washington is many degrees better at offense than MSU is, but the same general outline is there. And I think the same strategies that worked against Washington should be applied here. I don't think you need to do anything new. Michigan should have the advantage up front. And if you don't give up big plays because you're unnecessarily blitzing, or you let Childs escape and run for 60 yards, you should be fine.
Yeah. I will, because of Indiana's blitzing. If Wink blitzes less than Indiana against Michigan State, I will throw a little party for him. I'm planning on that. I'm also planning on hitting an ad break so we can talk about the defense, so let's get to that now. Since 2001, Underground Printing has been the Ann Arbor original. Starting from a West Quad dorm room and growing into the go-to source for custom apparel and Michigan gear. Whether you're gearing up for game day or creating custom design for your team or business, Underground Printing has you covered. With 3 convenience stores right on campus, getting your hands on high-quality Wolverine gear has never been easier. Visit Underground Printing today, in-store or online at shop.undergroundshirts.com, where Michigan pride meets top-notch service.
Here's the run again. Donovan Edwards. Whoa! Can they catch him? No! Donovan Edwards again, 85 yards. Guys, I'm not Gus. I'm Nick, and I rode the bus to Bursley every day back in '97. There's a ton of advisors out there. All of them have a focus on investments, but not all of them focus on planning like we do here at Peak. And none of them have that MGO blog connection like we do. Get your second opinion at peakwm.com/MGoblog. Retire with peak confidence.
Hi, it's Pete with Sharon's Heating and Air Conditioning. We've been serving Metro Detroit and Ann Arbor since 1981, and we've proudly stepped into the 21st century with an online store. Visit our website where you can order replacement air filters and subscribe to auto delivery, indoor air quality installation services like whole home humidifiers and UV light air purifiers, and get instant quotes on HVAC system replacements and water heaters. We pride ourselves on being upfront and transparent with our pricing. So if you have a furnace that's performing like James Franklin, give us a call or book an appointment at sharonsheating.com.
Hey, fellow Michigan fans, this is Matt Demarest, Realtor and Lender. For a decade now, you've heard me on the podcast talk about mortgages, and I've helped hundreds of fellow Michigan fans in that capacity, including Brian and Seth. But many of you don't know I'm a real estate broker as well. I promise to make buying, selling, or financing homes simple and cost-effective anywhere in the state of Michigan. Whether you're upsizing, downsizing, buying a vacation home, or building a real estate investment portfolio, send me a text or give me a call. It's never too early to make a plan, and the call is always free. My number is 734-882-8194. Again, 734-882-8194. Or you can find me online at realtorandlender.com. That's realtorandlender.com. Whether you want to buy, sell, or finance a home, or even all three, I promise to provide the experience so many of you have come to expect over the years. And as always, thank you, and go blue. NMLS 1011726, Equal Housing Lender.
Winewood Organics is Ann Arbor's only cannabis microbusiness. It's a place where plants are grown in living soil, where nearly every product is made, mixed, trimmed, and packed by hand, where first-time customers save 25% on everything from old-school hash to live resin carts. You can find them just west of downtown or at winewoodorganics.com. Winewood Organics, a place where the weed is better. Welcome back to MGoRadio 11.8. I'm Seth Fisher. This is Alex Drain. We're talking about Michigan State. We're moving over to the Michigan State defense, if it exists. Alex.
Yeah, it's I think 90th in SP Plus, and that feels a little generous for how rough these results have been this season. It started okay. Their game against Western Michigan in the opener, they held Western to 6 points and barely over 200 yards of offense, and that's actually a pretty decent Western team. They're 4-3 this year. They seem like a fairly good MAC team, so that was an encouraging start, and then it's just kind of all been downhill from there. They gave up 40 points to Boston College. BC, we now know, is one of the worst teams.
Yeah, that felt like a bigger game. That was a big win at the time, right? Michigan State, hey, it's coming together. The Jonathan Smith era is really, oh, God, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't look good to go to overtime against those guys anymore.
That one didn't age very well. And then they gave up 24 to Youngstown State, who is like a fringe top 25 FCS team. And then once they got into the Big Ten slate, it's been week after week of high point totals allowed. They've actually given up exactly 38 points 3 weeks in a row, preceded by 45 against USC. And of those games, 3 of them saw Michigan State give up at least 415 yards. Nebraska was the only game where they came out pretty decently from a yardage standpoint. And that's an interesting game to talk about because Nebraska's thing at the moment is they just can't avoid taking sacks. That Dylan Raiola just gets sacked and sacked and sacked and sacked. And that's very helpful for Michigan State because they don't normally get sacks. And this was a defensive line, which has got some new pieces, but there are a number of players that were there last year too. And last year they were, I think it was like 126th out of maybe 134 in PFF team pass rush grade. This year, Michigan State's moved up a bit. They're about 30 spots higher, but still very low for a power conference team. And against teams with better offensive lines, nothing from a pressure standpoint. They got 4 total pressures on 60-something snaps against Indiana. And look, Indiana has a good offensive line. But USC doesn't have a particularly incredible offensive line. And I know USC gets the ball out quickly, but they only had 6 pressures that whole game. Between those 2 games, they had 1 total quarterback hit, 0 sacks, just nothing. And the UCLA game, they actually did get 2 sacks on Nico Iamaleava. But beyond those 2 plays, there wasn't a ton of pressure otherwise. And there's just so many clips when you watch these games where the quarterback is completely unbothered, stands in there 5, 6, 7 seconds, then throws for a wide open guy for a 20-plus yard gain. And that's just been the story week after week.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Van Sumeren has been, because he was a Michigan commit, because Ben Van Sumeren's brother, he's a guy we've been watching for a long time. I think Michigan State played him early, and he was always supposed to be like a play him in his 3rd year kind of guy. Now it's his 4th year, and he's not getting any pressure whatsoever. He's stout against the run finally, which was his big problem, which you would not expect because he's still under 300 pounds. He's kind of had trouble training up there, up to like the size that I remember Michigan report on him specifically saying like we think we're going to get him to 315 by next year, and he's still under 300. So it's whatever the reason, he's managed to at least get low and get stout, but he doesn't get anywhere. And when you see them rushing, they have Jalen Thompson, who's been there forever. He's the same guy. He was a 5-star because he was, possibly going to turn into a tackle. And I think that he just ended up being a short, heavy edge, who's another can stop the run, but not not going to do anything for you pass rush wise. Isaac Smith's the guy they picked up from Texas Tech. He's long. He was supposed to be a develop him guy that never really developed. He's a 5th-year senior, and they're just kind of, chewing the rest of him. And then you really liked, and I thought this was interesting because he was a guy that I kind of saw a couple times too. And you pointed out that like you were watching these games, and they bring in David Santiago, and all of a sudden, oh, who's that man with a good pass rush? Oh, who's that with a good run stop? And he's not even starting. He's barely getting 25 snaps a game.
Yeah, they need to use him more. This is a line that's seen pretty heavy rotation across the board, particularly at edge. They've got 5 guys who have played pretty similar snap counts in the Big Ten conference games.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Santiago needs to be featured more because Isaac Smith, I don't know, what does he really do? And Jalen Thompson.
He's long is what he does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jalen Thompson is a guy that's kind of another example to me of where the concern with the Smith regime is, which is that Thompson, I think, is honestly regressed from where he was last year. And that's a player that you need to be developing. He's now in his 3rd year. He had some pedigree as a recruit. That needs to become a player. And he's just kind of a guy still. Santiago they got from Air Force, which is an interesting place to get a transfer from.
Right.
253. He's not really like a dip around the edge guy. It was mostly bull rush, but could actually move a tackle backwards. And if someone was kind of bothering the quarterback at any point, it was usually him. And he had some decent moments on the ground too. He's PFF's highest graded defender, which was, it's always nice when you come away from a game liking a guy and then finding out they like the guy too, because then you're like, okay, now I feel confident in saying that this guy isn't, a stiff or something. So it feels like he should play more, but they've just been heavily rotating everywhere but Van Sumeren, really. Van Sumeren's the rock on the defensive line. He plays a lot, and he's the one guy they have developed. Like, he was a major problem on this team for a couple of years. He's actually pretty decent now. But everyone else, and they just can't pass rush. They just can't at all. And they don't blitz it like a ton either. And so you're just giving the quarterback tons of time to work. And they can't cover anybody either. And so it's just such a bad combo of no pass rush plus no coverage.
Yeah, we you and I went back and forth last night when you were putting your FFF together on their coverages. Because this is Joe Rossi. This is the 3rd time we've done him, right? Because he was Minnesota's defensive coordinator before he came to Michigan State. And what does he do? He has both Saban and D'Antonio's system. He kind of switches off between. So when he's 1 high, he's mostly pattern match, which is Saban. When he's 2 high, he's mostly D'Antonio. And, they can rotate. They start from 2 high usually, right, and then kind of rotate to whichever one they're going to do. They like to kind of go with Saban stuff over when they have 3 guys on one side, and then they just kind of lock Malcolm Bell, their one decent cornerback that they got from UConn, onto a receiver and just kind of leave him in hell. And he doesn't get targeted very much, which is interesting given the way that they're using him, when they're basically asking him to take away one side of the field on his own. And the fact that he's not targeted basically tells you what's going on, which is that the other guys are so easy to take advantage.
Right, and that UCLA game, 0 targets for Bell, and it's not like Nico had trouble finding open receivers. It was happening way too frequently. And you can sort of just, you can ask the question of who's the culprit, and you can ask the question of who isn't the culprit. And that's the more pressing question, because you got Joshua Eaton, who is on the outside. He comes from Texas State, originally Oklahoma a long time ago. One of those 6-year players that's just bounced around.
Yeah, I think he might have been a walk-on at Oklahoma. It's hard to tell because they don't report which ones are walk-ons there, but it was. I remember pulling him from the roster, and because when I go over the rosters, right, I start with like Oklahoma's roster way back when and see where everybody went, and he didn't have a recruiting profile. I was like, oh, that usually means walk-on.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
He's just not very good, but they've also been rotating him out with Aiden West, who's a true freshman, not ready yet in my view. And then at the nickel spot, their starter Willie got injured. He wasn't performing very well anyway, but they've had to sub in East Carolina transfer Dontavius Nash, another one of those guys who's transferred a few times. He started at North Carolina. Nash has gotten beaten out of the slot routinely. That's something to look for, I guess. Maybe a Samaj Morgan game if there ever was going to be one. And then, I mean, the linebackers disappointed me too, because like coming into the year, I thought that would be probably the strength of the defense. Jordan Hall
Yeah, I remember
That's
him at
another guy.
IMG with. I think he was at IMG after JJ was. But IMG's coach came up, and JJ I think had just finished his freshman year, and I met IMG's coach, and he was just like, "Man, I got this kid Jordan Hall. He's just the best kid, and I can't wait to I'm really hoping to get some people interested in him." And I was like, "Oh yeah, man, I'll keep an eye out." And then he goes to Michigan State because I think he had a good relationship with one of their coaches at the time. So it's a little surprising that he's still there. I think he did enter the portal at one point and then came out of the portal. So he's had he's only a junior, but he's had a pretty rocky career for Michigan State. But he's somebody that they were talking about preseason as like the leader of this defense. Time for Jordan Hall to step forward. It's going to be, he's the next guy at the linebacker
Yeah,
spot.
yeah, I think because he was one of those, like when Mel Tucker was there, and they decided we're going to try to take some shots with more touted guys. We're going to have our
Mm-hmm.
seductive coach make tough poses in front of a Lambo, and that'll get people interested. And they got like by Job, and there were a couple
Mm-hmm.
other names. There were guys that they recruited, and all those guys washed out after Tucker left, went elsewhere. But Hall's like the one guy that's left over. I guess Jalen Thompson would be the other one. And I sort of liked what I saw in spots moments for Hall in previous seasons, and they had that Jordan Turner guy who transferred in from Wisconsin last year, and he was starting, and they still had Halliday. And those guys leave, and so coming into the season, I was fully expecting at this point in the year to have Hall as the danger man. He looked like the guy ready to lift off, and I don't know, it hasn't really happened to me. Like I was disappointed by his performance in the UCLA game. Wayne Matthews III, the Old Dominion guy, he came over the previous year, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Older player, but also like UCLA was dumping it off to the tight end, the running back leaking out into a flat, and no one was even in the neighborhood. Like they would just stand there over the middle and then be like, "Oh, I guess that's going on." And by that point, the guy's already run for 15 yards. And it just is so many levels of problems because it's the same thing with the safeties. And the safeties, we do have to note Nakai Martinez injured. Don't know when he's coming back. That's a big loss for them. It's destabilized Malik Spencer, who's playing worse than he has in the past. And it's put Armorian Smith, who was a Cincinnati transfer, on the field. He is a huge problem, too. And so it's just so many levels of issues where this pass defense just isn't clicking. It isn't coming together. It's not defending anyone at the moment.
Well, here's where we get to the scheme a little bit because D'Antonio quarters, right, is that press quarters where you have like the cornerbacks are going to take they're going to come down and play press, and they're going to have the outside receivers until they stem in, right? So they basically end up in man, but then they have the safeties come down. The safeties are basically playing run. So you have, and we got a lot of clips of this in the Indiana game where they're starting Amorian Smith and Malik Spencer at like 6 and 7 yards off the line of scrimmage. And I'm looking at that going, oh my God, man, like if we can have those tight ends going down the field in the seam and run by one of these guys, or Samaj Morgan gets matched up on one of these guys, right? Because they're not just going to have Dontavius Nash follow Samaj wherever he goes. That's destruction. So they're going to have a safety protecting and backing out. And, Michigan's got some fast guys. I'd love to see them use Marsh in that situation, run some of their receivers out of the slot, and see if you can run by these guys and give Bryce. Now that's if you're moving the ball, and I think this is why teams haven't really hit Michigan State this way that much, because that's like, okay, can we hit a downfield shot, right? Do we really want it? Like, that's a kind of a risk shot. And Michigan State, this is how they've been playing. And this is Joe Rossi to a T. He knows he doesn't have the players. So I think what he's doing is just saying, here, the hardest, the easiest thing for you to take are going to be these downfield shots. And just hope you miss them because you got a college quarterback who's on the road, overthrows it. The receiver drops. Samaj has not been the best hands, not been the best at finding the ball downfield. But if you have that, if you have Andrew Marsh, who's able to do that, or you can get McCulley matched up on one of these guys, I think that might be something that can give Bryce an opportunity to kind of go and make plays and a way to kind of break open this game early. And it's definitely something that you see in Chip Lindsey's offense. And last piece I wanted to mention on this is that I remember watching the Boston College game with Tommy Castellanos, who is a Chip Lindsey guy, right? He started with Lindsey at UCF. And Lindsey guys, you can see you can always see like the first quarterback coach with a guy kind of becomes imprinted on how he reads things. And you can see the Chip Lindsey in Castellanos. He's not a great quarterback, but you can see how he kind of goes through his progressions and how he has this, if it's there, you take the shot kind of sense that comes from that I totally associate with Lindsey, having watched all the Lindsey quarterbacks. And he had a lot of success. He's the only one who's really kind of tested Michigan State running this, Rossi stuff here. And like I said, you don't really have to. You can slant inside of them and they're going to bust anyway. But if I was looking at this defense and saying, okay, Michigan State's giving us a hard time, we need a score right here, that's going to be there all game. Just challenge these guys downfield.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. This is a game where you would just think this could be Bryce Underwood's best performance of the year, simply because you look at what other quarterbacks have done to this team. I put the numbers together in my piece, and it's brutal. The Power 4 quarterbacks against them, close to 75% completion, 9 yards an attempt, 1 touchdown in the 15 touchdowns, 1 interception in the 5 games. And the 1 interception is Raiola basically throwing it right at a linebacker who wasn't really, doing a whole lot. They just haven't stopped anybody all year in the pass game. Now, the run game there could be some more resistance there. I don't think they're going to suffocate. There's certainly other teams have gotten chunks on them, and I think there will be an explosive that'll go a long ways because they're just the error rate's too high. But at least with guys like Van Sumeren and some of those guys in the defensive line, they can do a little bit more to help out against the run. So this is probably a game to lean on the pass, and that should be pretty fruitful.
Yeah, I was, Brian's doing the write-up on this one right now, but the key matchup I would pick for the offense is Sherrone Moore versus Chip Lindsey. The last thing I want to do against these guys, is let them line up their safeties at 6 and 7 yards and try to run Jordan Marshall at them, right? Because that's kind of that's playing into what they want you to do at this point. That's playing into what what their strength is, right? And it's been too easy to just kind of pick them apart and take what's there. And Chip Lindsey has been so good this year at taking what's there. But it's been a lot more, he's been able to make those play calls a lot more in home games than road games. And the road-home split in the way that they're calling this offense, they get a lot more tighter. They try to establish the run. They're not trying to have the quarterback and receiver read very much, which is understandable because their road games this year have been Oklahoma and USC and Nebraska. All of them, I would put them top 10 fan bases and top 10 hard places to play, right? You are talking about some elite. All the respect to Nebraska fans. All the respect to USC fans for that game. And all the respect to Oklahoma fans especially. Those are hard places to play. I think one of the keys to this game is going to be whether Michigan fans take over the stadium like we did in 23. It's a night game, which is kind of hard to get up to, but not as hard from Ann Arbor. It's ironic that a lot of Michigan fans live closer to Michigan State than a lot of Michigan State fans, right? A lot of their base is in Detroit. So I know a lot of people. I know lots of Michigan State fans, obviously. One of the reasons I do this is because I needed to talk to some Michigan fans again because my friends from Michigan split to the 4 Winds, and I was surrounded by family and friends who were state people around here. So they're so down that it's like, do I really want to go up there and tailgate all day and get home at 2 a.m.? Michigan fans, if they show out, they take over the stadium like we did in 23. It was being there. I've never seen a stadium takeover so complete as it was in 23. Now that was special circumstance. Michigan was on their way to the national championship. Michigan State had just had everything go down there, and the only thing that anyone wanted to talk about was the Signs Gate thing, which was, that just made Michigan fans even madder and louder. And by the end of that game, all the Spartans had left because it was a night game. There's no reason to stay up late, but all the Michigan fans stayed in the stadium, were jumping up and down and cheering their team, and the team was responsive, right? There's nothing like having the announcer trying to yell at the fans like, hey, everyone, please be quiet. It's just like, no, we're not going to be quiet. This is our team out there. So I'm hoping to see Michigan fans show up. I say as I'm planning on probably not being there because I need some dang sleep. Anyway,
I definitely would think there will be quite a few Michigan fans there, but the breakdown, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
So
I mean, this is a game Michigan should win ultimately. Like, they're clearly a better team than Michigan State. MSU's going to have some stuff ready, as they always do. But if Michigan just comes well prepared, they're certainly a more talented team. Certainly, just a better team overall. It is on the road, but this is a game you should win, and it'll be interesting just to see Underwood in the first game of this rivalry. For him, being an in-state guy, he's very familiar with the dynamics. So we'll see. It should be an interesting one. I will note on special teams, MSU had a punt blocked for a touchdown by Nebraska. That was not great. I don't know a lot about their kicker.
Martin
was the only thing I
Connington,
had.
7-9, log of 50. That's what I got. New guy, yeah. Omari Kelly he's their backup receiver. He's the second receiver. He's MTSU guy. Has been a pretty decent punt returner. He catches 60% of them that are put in the air, which is, I think, 80% of the ones that land in bounds, which is a really good rate.
Good.
He's got a 20-yard per return average. So when he does take it back, he actually does make some yards. The kick returner was Alonte Brown. He's out. He's the normal slot receiver. So, score prediction?
Let's do 31-17.
Yeah, that's good. I was going to go 34-10, which is the score prediction, not the relative ACT scores. All right, we're going to get to a break. We'll come back, and we're going to talk about the Washington game that was.
It's good. You know, sometimes you get your little brother excited when you're playing basketball and stuff. You let him get the lead, and then you just come back and take it back.
Do you think of Michigan State as your little brother?
Yep.
Hey, it's Nick Hopwood, CFP at Peak Wealth Management. What's great about MSU Week for me is that my little brother went to Michigan State, which means he hates Mike Hart with a passion and calls all Michigan fans Walmart Wolverines. But you are not a Walmart Wolverine, and you are probably in great shape financially. But are you optimizing? How much time do you have to devote to managing your portfolio and your financial plan? How would you grade your results? Be honest. And how much time are you spending on these TPS reports anyway? It's time to outsource and partner with a pro you know, the guy who rode the bus to Bursley. Visit peakwm.com/mgoblog today.
Did you say rivalry week? Rivalry week. Rivalry week. Rivalry week. Rivalry week. Rivalry week. Right way. Guys, it's rivalry week.
I can't believe I'm doing this. If you find yourself in the penalty box, you want a Michigan man arguing your case, call criminal law attorney and former prosecutor Jonathan Paul tonight. It's 248-924-9458, or visit his old website at michiganlograd.com.
It's the time of year where cracks in your defense get exposed. Good thing to fix is a phone call away. Community Pest Solutions is a lockdown defender for homes and businesses. If you're hearing noises in your walls or attic or dealing with bug problems, it's time to call Community. To schedule an inspection, just Google Community Pest Solutions or hit up their website at pestfreemi.com.
Whether you just lost a tooth on the field, chipped one at a tailgate, or it's just time to get those wisdom teeth out, Radicke Oral Surgery has you covered. Trusted by Celine and Ann Arbor families for 25 years, the Radicke Oral Surgery team treats every patient like family, and they accept most major dental insurance plans. We're going to have a lot of reasons to smile this year, so make sure that thing is ready. So when it's time to replace or remove a tooth, call up the team that always converts. Visit drradicke.com to schedule, DRRADECKI.com. Need help with insurance? Well, longtime MGoBlog supporter Owen Rosen is back at his new insurance brokerage, Royal Oath Insurance Group. Owen might not be the knowledge, but he and his team have the life, business, car, and home insurance knowledge you need. Based in Michigan, but they can also help in other states too, you can call or text Owen today at 586-229-1026 or visit Royal Oath, that's OATH, insurance.com. Welcome back to MGoRadio 11.8. I'm Seth with Alex Train, who's wearing a Toronto Blue Jays shirt today. We're I don't know. I guess everyone's kind of split between Canada and Japan on this World Series. We'll see. We'll see. We're not talking about that. We are going to talk about the upon further review charting of the Washington game, of which we only have half because Brian's been ill. He says he's going to get that up later, but we've gone over the game, and we have some of the initial returns from him, and the thing that really stands out, I think, and stood out while watching the game is Bryce Underwood was just on target, and he was throwing down across the middle. He was throwing downfield. Some of the passes that weren't brought in were passes that will absolutely be brought in by his NFL tight ends and receivers and whatnot. And then the pass to Tonelli, who was you see it. He sees that he's got the safety going the wrong way, and he kind of discounts that guy, and that was just falling off his back foot. One of the more impressive throws we've seen, obviously, since JJ. But in Michigan history, I think that goes up there with JJ and a pass from Drew Henson that I can remember. And some of the best throws, I'm skipping over a lot of throws of Tom Brady, obviously, but there are some of the best throws in Michigan history. And you could see it. You can see the 5-star coming out. I don't know if you had some takeaways from this game, but I know I'm anxious to see what Brian comes up with on some of those, because there was, I want to know what he compares to JJ basically.
I mean, it felt clearly like Underwood's best game at Michigan. I don't think there was a question about that. Really confident, in control, and that was one of those games where we can start playing. Remember the JJ incompletion game? Just remembering what the few incompletions were, and just how many of them now are just drops, and there's just been so few, actually bad passes that have been thrown.
Yeah, I mean, well, he was what 21 for 27. Was it was the final thing?
Yeah, I think that was something about. I think there was 6 incompletions.
Yeah, and a lot of those, one of them's batted down. I think it was the first pass actually. They kind of got tipped and it kind of went out of bounds, and then there were 3 drops at least. There was another one raked out. I wouldn't call that one a drop, but well defended, but caught and then knocked out. So bad passes in this game. I think there was just one that kind of fluttered onto the ground, and that was really it. I don't remember any bad reads. I don't think Brian came out. There was the time he sacked himself. That
wasn't great.
So yeah, the freshman is still there, but we still see this dichotomy between road Bryce and home Bryce, and that was why I brought up Michigan fans showing up to Spartan Stadium this weekend, because maybe we can kind of start to transition between so we can do it every single week, and I think that's to be expected from a freshman. But now we've seen it. Now we know he can throw across. Maybe he's got some of that confidence. And this is a good team, I think, to try to build that confidence again. Obviously, receivers had some drops. There was not as bad as when I saw Samaj Morgan just goes off his face mask. He's just not ready for it, which is, I don't know what was going through his head at that moment, because you're expecting that. I think that maybe Bryce sped up the throw a little bit. He just, he could have just laid it in there. It'd be a touchdown. But it's 4th down. Evan Lincoln just got hurt. Maybe that was just kind of situational. Everybody's heart's pumping a little bit more.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, to me, with the receivers' biggest story was just the emergence of the other 2 tight ends.
Yeah.
Because that was the first big moment, and they were classmates, right? Marshall and Tonelli.
Yeah, and Tonelli, yeah.
2023 guys, yeah. So nice day all around for the 2023 tight ends.
Yeah, and good for them too, because they got Klein's been around longer, so he was obviously going to be ahead of them. But they've been kind of getting passed by younger guys, right? Hansen, came in and played as a freshman over the 2 redshirt freshmen last year, and Brady Prescorn kind of had a lot of hype. Now he's been injured, so where is he? Well, he's been hurt. And then Michigan didn't really get anybody this year. They got a fullback, but they didn't really get a tight end. They wanted Olish. But they're which I don't know. Maybe I checked in real quick to see if Ola should be breaking loose now that Franklin's gone, and Franklin was the reason he almost committed to Michigan, not the reason he committed to Penn State. So I don't think we're going to get him. He's a Penn State legacy who was a little iffy on the coaching staff, and now that they've fixed that, I don't think there's any chance of turning him around. Maybe, who knows? The offensive line, Link was playing pretty good. I know that my conversation with Brian earlier was that it kind of sucks that we were heading towards like a praise Link game before that happened, and it happened pretty early, so small sample size. But we got to see Blake Frazier, and he was pretty much what our hopes were for him. I thought that he was small, not able to push guys around as much, but so agile, and just it's hard to get around him because his feet move so well. He did get put on his butt one time, but PFF didn't even put a pressure on him for that. We did. I'm pretty sure Brian did. But yeah, man, it's nice to see him performing. It's nice to see there were a couple of mistakes again from the interior guys. I think that Crippen and El Hadi didn't have their best games, but the young guys all seem to be performing pretty well, and it's good to see them taking a step forward against a defensive line that was probably supposed to be strong against the run, if not the pass.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go back over and really look at it too closely, but just watching at the time, the only Frazier moment I really noticed was that one where he got knocked over. And that just feels like at this point in time with his weight, that's going to be the story. That's just going to happen from time to time, but no other really concerning moments, which is a good sign. And I think overall, it's going to be good to get him this experience, get him a few weeks. And it's not like Michigan is going to be facing the world's greatest edge defenders over the next few weeks. I mean, Northwestern is a decent defense, but Purdue and MSU are arguably the two worst defenses in the Big Ten, and Maryland been scrappy on defense this year, but they're also pretty young, so it will be similar age level to Frazier in that matchup. And obviously, if he has to play Ohio State, it is what it is. But they can get to 9-3 pretty comfortably, I feel like, with Frazier at tackle, and that will be important just to get him some mileage. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate that this is like the exact point in the year when Babalola was in theory going to be operational, and
right.
Then the moment happened where he would have come on the field, but he's not available. But honestly, letting Frazier get some run is not the end of the world, and certainly a good thing for the long term, I think.
Yep. And then Jordan Marshall. I want to give him a prospector name. Ain't finished. Because every single run, Brian's like, old Mike Hart, basically, is who he is. Every single time you think he's stopped, he's still moving a little bit. He doesn't fumble. He gets kind of, he gets low and he keeps on churning out yards, and keeps fighting so hard for those yards that and it's a big difference in this offense. It's a big difference if you can give Bryce a second and 2 versus a second and 4 or second and 6, where they can go and take a shot downfield, or they can throw it down to a tight end or try something interesting. And it was we're trying to see differences between him and Justice Haynes, right? And we went into the season saying these guys are very similar players. I think they've diverged, and now that we've seen what Marshall really does, Marshall is isn't going to go down on first contact. I was really upset that they blew that fourth down attempt down, because I went back and watched it a few times. They didn't really give us any good views, but then someone shared the All-22 internally, and I got to go see where their video had him, and it was pretty clear. They blow it dead, and they won't let Sharon look at it again because they blew it dead when he was still short. And then he's still moving, he's still churning, and they never should have blown it dead at that point, because then he moves the pocket and he falls down and he gets it, and they're on top of him, but you can definitely see the ball is under his shoulders, and his shoulders go down well over the line. So unless the ball was tucked deep into his belly, that was a first down. But that's can't. The officiating was a whole different story in this game, but that was a good. It's good to see him, because I don't know how long Haynes is going to be out, but he looks like one of those things where he's got a side injury where you have to kind of let it heal, and the longer you let it heal, the better. In the ability to kind of go back to him, I didn't really get much out of Jasper Parker. We'll see if Brian comes up with anything there. Defensively, I think that it's really hard for me to talk about the defense after charting this. And I got in some trouble, and there were a lot of comments about how I was being too hard on Wink and blaming him for, locker room issues possibly that had people sitting down. I think that was fair criticism, and I apologize. It's an interesting spot for me because, Wink comes in against a fairly decent offense, and they hold him to 7 points, and it could have been less. When you talk about things that were just luck or officiating, most of it went against Michigan in this game. So I had a lot of instances where guys got held, and that was the only reason that Washington got any yards, including on their touchdown, or the play right before their touchdown that put them on 1st and goal. There were some heinous missed, and I was pretty upset about those just watching them, especially because one of them was going to be like a blow up a guy in the backfield on the 2-yard line when they were under their for TJ Guy. But saying all that, considering the performance only gave up so many X amount of points, I saw a lot of Washington doing bad, not necessarily Michigan forcing them to do bad. And I wanted to see, maybe I'm just so down on Wink after the USC game and the history of charting him and seeing him regress and everything like that. But he did absolutely go to a quarters, basically cover 2 on one side, cover 4 on the other side. It's the same game plan they had against Ohio State last year. And they rushed 4. There were a couple times when they put 2 tight ends out there and Michigan stayed in their nickel. And these are big things that we've been begging them to do. Just stay in your base. And when they stayed in their base, Ernest Hausman was allowed to play fast. He had maybe his best game as a Wolverine, other than that Ohio State game. And Jimmy Rolder had a great game too. Both those guys were like plus double digits in the charting in the end of the game. Derek Moore had a great game, as usual. The guy who didn't have a great game, and this goes into the who's in charge of the rotations, is Cam Brandt. And I don't know how much you saw, man, but I was charting and seeing him okay, is he more responsible? Not really. He's going upfield, right? Is he stronger? Not really. He's getting pushed out when TJ Guy isn't. And so the dichotomy between these guys, and they got similar snaps. I don't want to overplay it. Cameron Brandt got 21 snaps. TJ Guy got 17 in this game. So they're evening out more. And Moore had 32, Barham at 31. But it's still, Cameron Brandt, 21 snaps, Derek Moore, 32 snaps at that strong side. And it's hey, play your best players. And there are key points in the game where they don't have their best players on the field. And it's not like we haven't seen Brandt enough to know what he is or seen Brandt enough to give him an opportunity to get better. He is just who he is. And I think that overplaying him is probably putting too much on him to the point where he's getting tired because he's out there for a long time, for a long drive. And it's getting frustrating to see them leaning on a guy who's just, you shouldn't ask that of him. That's not who he is. And Derek Moore is that guy, so it's just weird to me. Do you have an explanation? I'm kind of putting you on the spot there. Hey, explain to me this weird thing.
I mean, I feel because this applies to some of the secondary too, and just in terms of some of the guys they've rotated in. I mean, it feels like Michigan won the national title in 2023 because they rotated in part, and then they came to believe that having their guys being fresher at the end was kind of a secret sauce, and they want to keep doing that, even though the players they now have are not as good as the backups they had then. That's my most logical one, because it doesn't seem like something that would come from Wink. Nobody in the NFL rotates like that. Nobody really in college football rotates to that degree. It just feels like they're trying, especially when the offseason went the whole, we're going to replace Graham and Grant, but in the aggregate, right? We're going to rotate all these bodies. And it just feels like that was what they really planned on coming into the year, and have been kind of, I don't know, too late to break it up. But it's definitely, there's a lot of Cam Brandt in these games, which is, it is a little bit funny that it's not exactly the same, but it does remind me of the old Jalen Harrell Ojabo, 2021 thing.
Yeah.
Was your beat back in the day.
Oh, that was so. I'm going to go back to that briefly, because the explanation for that was that when they went 2 tight ends, Michigan wanted to put 3 tackles on the field, and it wasn't that that was okay. They didn't trust Ojabo to be in coverage. And what you have to do if you're going to be the Sam as opposed to being the edge is you have to be able to play coverage, right? You have to be able to even get out in a slot and cover a tight end. And they trusted Harrell to do Harrell. I always pronounce his name wrong. It's Harrell. Always trusted him to do that, and they didn't trust Ojabo to do it. And we saw, I think, one time Ojabo ends up against Jackson Smith-Njigba, and everyone knows from the snap, it's like, that's not going to go well. It doesn't go well because JSN still he's doing that to NFL cornerbacks right now. That was expected. But they had an opportunity that year to kind of stick in their 4-3, and this was something that Minter addressed. He got here and he was just like, okay, we're going to just have. If they have two tight ends, we're just going to stay in nickel. If their two tight ends are not like Max Bredesen and Marlon Klein, we're going to stay in nickel. And that worked for them all the way through 2023. And that was the thing. 23, they rotate a lot because those guys they had more players who are more than just guys. Braden McGregor was a guy, not just a guy, right?
Right.
So it makes sense to rotate him and Derek Moore was a guy. So it makes sense to have those guys. And Derek Moore is a true sophomore that year. That made sense to rotate those. Jalen Harrell was playing very well at the end of 2023. Josiah Stewart was playing very well at the end of 2023. Both those guys, put one of them out there, he destroys Ohio State. Put the other one out there, he destroys US. It didn't matter. Like, both those guys are stars. That made sense to me. What's not making sense is you have Trey Williams in this game actually playing really well. Well, the best game is he's had in a Wolverine uniform. Still makes a lot of mistakes. But now you've seen he's starting to find a second gear. Damon Payne doesn't have that second gear. I know Etta is just not ready for that yet. And Williams, Payne, and Etta all get the same number of snaps. And they get 10 more for Ike in there. I know they're trying to work him in. And Benny got hurt a little bit, so it makes a little bit of sense. Trey Pierce was coming off being hurt. He only gets 8 snaps. That made sense. What doesn't make sense is that the evenness instead of the we got to get into this about, there was one score in this game that didn't need to happen, and that was at the end of the half, they get a touchdown, and they get most of those yards because Jordan Young is out there playing nickel. And Jordan Young, I wrote his profile, I think he's a young Rod Moore, and that's what Michigan says about him too. And I got no problem with Jordan Young getting some snaps late in the game when you're winning or work him in, when you have the opportunity. He's in there at the end of the half playing nickel. And they immediately go after him. They get a big chunk, and they get a touchdown out of that drive. And it's like, you got to know who your guys are. And that's just and I asked Sam about it. He's like, well, they were down. They were down 2 players at safety, so they kind of had to, that's the rotation. And they play the rotation. I'm like, well, yeah, but, TJ Metcalf, he's playing 55 snaps. You can give him 4 more than that, right? He can go to 59. I don't think anyone was that tired. Those are my defensive complaints on a day that there wasn't much to, where they still played very well. I think that the best thing out of this is that Wink chilled out. Whether it was forced to or whether he saw it himself, it all comes to the same thing. And if he can maintain that, I think we're going to be fine. I'm going to do one more ad break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk some hockey and basketball.
Long Road Distillers ready-to-drink canned cocktails are made for Michigan game days. Our lavender lemonade is crafted with our own vodka, real ingredients, and an enthusiasm unknown to mankind. No corners cut, no shortcuts taken. Distilled and canned in Grand Rapids, it's ready for the tailgate, the stands, or your post-game celebration. So whether you're gearing up for the game, raising a can in victory, or charting for the next UFR, take the long road. Made in Michigan, for Michigan.
In southeastern Michigan, the yearly cost for a nursing home averages
approximately $100,000.
It doesn't have to, though. Reed McCarthy founded Ann Arbor Elder Law after handling a tricky situation for his own family. Years of experience later, his boutique firm works with clients across southeast Michigan, dealing with Medicaid planning, long-term care, and tax, disability, and family law, not to mention family dynamics. If you have a family member who may need that level of care, or if you're ready to start your own estate plan, Reed can give you a plan for the future. Visit AnnArborElderLaw.com or call 734-945-9693. That's 734-945-9693.
Is your online store sluggish, outdated, underperforming? You may be suffering from chronic crappy website disorder. 1 in 3 online stores built by your brother's friend's nephew currently suffers from chronic crappy website. But now, there's hope. Introducing Human Element. Huel has helped hundreds suffering from CCW to turn their online stores around, creating fast, secure, and engaging online experiences that turn visitors into customers and put products back at the top of their search engine game.
Before Huel, I had abandoned carts, browser errors, and poorly animated GIFs. Now, with Huel, I can focus on what I'm actually good at, running my business.
Jeffrey, would you be a dear and pull the Ferrari around?
Side effects may include increased traffic, customer conversions, better ROI, compliments, elation, and early retirement. Why live with the disappointment of chronic crappy website disorder? Speak to your Human Element consultant today to see if Huel is right for you.
The only thing we can be sure of about the future is that it will be absolutely fantastic. I'm thinking of the incredible breakthrough made possible by developments in communications.
Arthur C. Clarke's 1964 vision is now reality with Signalwire, a cloud platform that enables developers to build the applications that will reshape the future of communications.
These things will make possible a world in which we can be in instant contact with each other wherever we may be.
You can add cutting-edge, real-time video and audio to any product, website, or application with APIs and SDKs for developers of all skill sets. Signalwire is optimized for high quality and low latency communication functionality for video, voice, and text messaging capabilities.
Almost any skill could be made independent of distance. Men will no longer commute, they will communicate.
See for yourself at signalwire.com. Use code 2021 and receive $25 in developer credit. Go to signalwire.com.
Signalwire Communications OGs, original geeks of programmable communication.
Fast food blues in the morning, in the evening, even in the middle of the afternoon. Yes, I do. Well, now I'm jumping in my car.
Welcome back to MGoRadio 11.8. That was music from Chirp, a local Ann Arbor band that people have been chirping at me to wreck. And glad I finally did. I've seen them twice, I think. Anyway, they're a great band. They jump around genres all the time. Their covers are amazing. I listen to their covers all the time, and I finally had an excuse to use Chirp. So check them out. I think they're playing at the Pig in a month or so. Also playing in Ann Arbor, we have a 7 o'clock exhibition. 7 p.m. on Saturday night, so you can watch half an hour of this before the football game. Way to go, schedulers! Michigan is going to be playing the Red Storm St. John's at Madison Square Garden, exhibition basketball. But I think our centers are going to be involved in this one. Am I correct?
I don't know off the top of my head, but hopefully, because that was kind of the story of the Cincinnati game.
Yeah. I thought it was funny because people are like, "Oh my God, we can't defend anything," and I'm like, "This defense is built to have like us, 2 excellent rim defenders that you can put them to, and that was how they played. They practiced that way, and they rotate, and then it goes to a 4 or basically an over, I'm not expecting Will Cheddar to be your top defensive center all the time. That game was also, the whistles were weird, man. Like, that was, I don't know how much you were watching. The second half, Michigan makes a comeback, but it's just like every single trip, both sides are just going, and then I don't think it was unfair to one side or the other, but it was just kind of like everyone's just taking a parade to the line, and then they would miss an obvious call, and then they give a makeup call on the other end, and it was just a weird game. But the things that we could learn from this game, things we learned from that game. Things we learned, I think that Trey McKinney's really not ready yet. He had there were a couple of moments where he's just kind of like flying all over the place. I didn't care that he missed his threes. That's gonna, they look like the shot was pure. Roddy Gale looked kind of iffy in that game, but he was still Roddy Gale. He's gonna be fine. And we got our first look at what the offense is gonna look like with their 2 new transfers, and they looked good to me. It looked like the offense actually flowed really well when either one of them were on the court, but especially when both were. I don't know if you had some takeaways from that.
No, not particularly. I didn't get to see a ton of the game, but it was
Oh.
definitely when I first turned it on, I was like, "This is the score." Like
Yeah.
it was in the. But it was good that they battled back, and then once I found out, the centers are injured, and it seemed like they were doing some experimental stuff, right? Like they had Roddy Gale running the point,
Mhm.
and there were a lot of turnovers that came from that. Like I felt like they probably were using the exhibition as a way to just test some things out. I'll be curious to see how they approach the St. John's one, because St. John's is a good team. I mean, they're, I think, number 7 in the preseason poll. I don't know where they are in KenPom, but projected to be a pretty darn good team. So it's nice to get these gauges on where you're at. And basketball is interesting just because that exhibition, the first exhibition was, I mean, it's like a month before Michigan plays a meaningful game. Like,
Right.
they'll play Oakland, but it was about a month spaced out from when they would play Wake Forest, which is like the first time you need to really be ready to go. So
Mhm.
it's kind of a window into where the team is at just as practice is moving along, and there are going to be some kinks in that.
Yeah. I mean, the main things that I noticed in there is that, the ball doesn't stick. And that was part of the problem last year. Kason even kind of got involved in that too. The only I mean, Gale didn't look very comfortable running the point. McKinney, they gave him a couple opportunities to run the point. They gave Yaxel a couple opportunities to run it. He was up and down. There was one turnover that was pretty bad where he just kind of didn't really know where Namari was going and threw it away during the comeback. But I thought, you see it with Cadeau. You see what he's going to bring. He's an annoying defender. He's a little small, and that's going to be an issue this year. But like they did play Kason, he wasn't fully of himself, but like you could see that he's progressed in the offense, which is good to see. Winters Grady looked like he's usable. You can bring that guy out and have him make some shots. Cheddar got hot, so like it was weird having both those guys out at the same time. It's just like we have two dudes who just fling it around the edge, and that might be the one weird thing that they were doing. I don't think the Goodman Lendeborg as the bigs thing really worked out well. That was one of the things they tried. But when they had Cheddar and Grady on the court at the same time, they weren't very good defensively. That was obvious. But they were good enough defensively to make up for the fact that they were just shooting the lights out, and there was just space for everybody. And if you have Burnett and Grady and Cheddar on the and Kason and Cadeau on the court at the same time, it might, I don't know, it might be or McKinney. Like there's no defense on that in that group. We are going to see a very different test this week. I think Cincinnati was a let's go beat them with their athleticism kind of team, and St. John's is built to be defensive. They got Zubi Ejiofor, who's out in the front court there. He's one of the best defensive players in the league. They picked up a whole lot of shot makers in the offseason. Ian Jackson, North Carolina. Josan Sannon from Arizona State. Isaiah Sellers from Stanford. They picked up a point guard, which is weird that Rick Pitino finally has a real point guard because they've been doing it by committee forever. In Dylan Darling, so we'll see how Michigan defends that. But I got a feeling this is a really good. If you're going to have an exhibition game, right, where you get to go and try some things, I think this is like the perfect scenario. You're in Madison Square Garden, you get a trip to kind of practice there and see and get a feel for playing there. For St. John's going to be an elite team. I think they have a shot at Elite Eight. They're at Final Four this year, and they're going to be that because they're all talented, right? It's not like they're a team that has to slowly come together and gel. You know exactly what they are and who they're going to be and what they're going to do, and now you get to test yourself against, I guess, a static thing. So whether the bigs can actually play through him, whether they get pushed around, whether they're able to move the ball around against all that length, those are things I'm really going to see. And I'm not going to care really what goes on defense as much because this is a team unlike any team we're really going to play this year. And they're still getting to know each other and they're going to be messing around with different lineups. But I want to see that offense working against what I think is going to be an elite defense this year. Any thoughts on St. John's, or you want to talk hockey?
No, I don't know. I don't know too much about them, but I mean, it's Rick Pitino, good pedigree in terms of they were a good team last year. Were they a 1 seed or a 2 seed last year? I mean, they were very highly ranked. Like that's who I want to see Michigan having an exhibition with. Like I'm very pleased for that to be on the schedule. And then in the regular season, you've got Duke in the midst of the Big Ten play, but before that, the tournament and over Thanksgiving should bring you against some decent competition. San Diego State's in there. They have the TCU game. Like, this is a team that's going to be tested pretty early in the season, and having an exhibition against St. John's, I think, will go a long way in getting them ready for that, which is nice.
Yeah, I think St. John's was 14th in KenPom last year, so there you go. Let's move on to hockey. They are 7-0. They just had a big win last night. I thought a fairly even game, but Michigan had the advantage in getting the Bucks to actually go in the net as opposed to off the post against Western Michigan, defending champions. Western Michigan looked good, and Michigan just looked organized. And you watch more hockey than I do. I didn't get to actually see every game last year in the last few years because what I have, other things I got to do. But I watch enough and I go to enough games that there's just been this sloppiness about Michigan's defense in the last few years. And this year just seems to be gone, even from guys who I thought were kind of sloppy last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been a really mature start to the season. They just seem in control. They seem structured. And that was an interesting game because they were kind of battered out of the gate. They had to kind of hang in there. Western got some early power plays, and those games are tough where you come shorthanded early. You're just trying to find your footing. Shots at one point were, I think, like 8-1 or 9-1 in Western's favor. Now, Michigan scored on their one, which was a nice development for the game. And you always want to get an early lead against a team like Western that can just kind of push you around and protect the dangerous areas. So they get the early goal from Jaden Perron, who I've liked so far. He was a guy I wasn't really sure about what his package of skills was going to be and how it could make an impact. I don't think he's one of the best players on the team, but there's a lot of skill there. And he has one or two really nice highlights a game, and that one he flipped from kind of a tough angle, probably a softer goal from Hampton Slukinski, but it was an important goal. Got Michigan up early. They were able to weather the storm, and then again they started to find level ground. And from that point forward, it was a pretty even game, but I think Michigan came out better. There were a lot of penalties, 7 aside. I didn't love that, but Michigan's penalty kill was really good in the game. And their power play wasn't incredible, but they did hold the zone quite a bit. They ended up getting an empty netter late. They get a 4-on-4 goal at one point. The biggest story of the game, though, was Jack Ivankovic. I mean, Michigan's defended well this season. I thought they did a decent job in that game, but Ivankovic made some saves. Now, he did get the benefit of, I think, 3 shots off the iron, which is always goalie's best friend. But as the goalie would say, it didn't actually beat me if it didn't go in. So
yeah. After my pads, I like the the iron. They're just extension of my pads. I like them. They're part of the goalie.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but that was. I mean, he has a shutout already this season. Before that, this was his second of the year. But this one is a different level of competition, and
suffice to say that there's understatement of the year.
Yeah. Just so many big saves in that game. Just looks really composed. He's not too deep in his net. He's not overreactive, not sliding around. Just looks really confident, knows how to play the angles. And I think he is. You never want to declare victory with a goalie too early, but he certainly looks like a big time dude to me. And it's a really nice benefit to have after a few years there where Michigan is kind of scrounging around in the portal for veteran goalies, and their recruits weren't highly drafted, and you're just kind of sitting there thinking, like, how are we not able to find goalies? And that area seems solved, and the defense is playing well in front of him. I mean, I think they've allowed 7 goals in 7 games so far this year. I mean, that's by far the best goal prevention start to a season since Mel Pearson came in, right? Like in this continuation of the Pearson into Naurato era, this is the best they've looked early in a year. Tonight's game will be difficult. They're going to be going into Kalamazoo. Lawson it's a really good environment, especially since Western has started taking hockey seriously and had some success these last 5-10 years. It's become a really tough place to play. Michigan's had some troubles there. It feels like this will be the game where they finally drop one, but if they could win it, there's a chance they could be number 1 in the poll next week. It's just been a great start to the season.
Because right now they're 3 and Western Michigan's 2, so 3 sweeps 2 early in the season when nothing's really written in stone. But you talk about that's going to be a crazy environment. They just won the national championship. I think they're raising the banner tonight. They circled this one. Right, this is like let's because they know, and Western is, even though Michigan fans don't really realize, I think Michigan hockey fans know that Western Michigan still holds it against us that we canceled the game against them, still thinks that Michigan doesn't take them seriously, still thinks that they belong and that we ducked them by forming the Big Ten and get all high on ourselves and that we should be rivals. My other little brother's a Western grad, so I get. He's not the one who's he doesn't care that much, but his friends do, and they are like, tell your Michigan hockey guy, your brother, that so and so, right? I know the hate is there, but yeah, they're we went to we had Robert Morris. We didn't get to really talk about those 2 games, but I thought the first one of those, Ivan Kovic looked a little shaky, and they gave up, and Michigan had to kind of fight back twice in the first game, and then they came back in the second one, just poured it on. But I gotta, I have a hockey bias, man. I know this about myself. I like the smaller goalies for some reason. Right? The whole time, I was always just a little too critical of Portillo. And I just, always just a little too and then, when we get these little guys, I'm not, Ivan Kovic's not little. He's average, right? But he's little for NHL, right?
Sure.
Yeah. But he just, I feel more, I don't know, if maybe this the era that I grew up watching Michigan hockey in and became a Michigan hockey fan, that I got that stupid bias kind of makes me just like him in there. The thing I do notice about this team, and I actually wanted to ask you about this too, is no one's a superstar in this team, right? We don't have a first round draft pick who's going to just, or we don't have we don't have the best player in the country like they thought we were going to get, right? We don't have any of those guys. We do have, we have plenty of drafted players, but who's the stars in this team? Is it it's Hayes, Horkoff, Robertson's coming through a little bit as and then defensively, it's just you just roll out guys one after another, and they're so much closer to each other than normal, right? It's the T.J. Hughes, not the other Hughes team. If that's a way to put it.
Yeah, they roll 4 lines, roll 3 pairs. I didn't actually look at what the ice time was last night, but through the first few weekends of the season, first 3 weekends of the season, they were really distributing ice time very evenly between their pairs and lines, not really leaning too hard in any direction, which is kind of unique. And they are a talented team. They have a lot of drafted players. I think 13 or 14, which is near the highest in the country. But as you noted, they don't have the top 5 pick or the lottery kind of guy.
Yeah.
But Page is good and Horkoff's good. And then in TJ Hughes' case, that's a senior who's been around. He's going to be signed in a UDFA contract after the season and one of the better players in the conference. So it's not like they're devoid. Yeah, looking at the ice time here, their top forward last night, 18:33, TJ Hughes. Lowest ice time is Aiden Park, 12:03. That's really balanced in terms of allocation. And on defense, Tyler Duke led the way at 21:30, Shock at 10:45. Everyone else between 14 and 17 minutes. They feel really comfortable with their depth, leaning on everybody. Adam Valentini has been able to play at a higher level than I was expecting coming into the year, given his age. He's really fit right in. They just have a lot of guys who can play. And Shifsky scored the empty netter. That's one of the few guys that's undrafted, but he's been so steady for Michigan this season. And the one thing I liked about last night's game is that they were not afraid to engage physically with Western Michigan, which has been a problem in the past. Western's always got a big team. They love to hit. And Michigan's been out-muscled and pushed around by them in the past. And Michigan was matching them check for check last night and not afraid to really show some aggression. And it did lead to more penalties, but I think it benefited from them. They benefited from it overall. So it's really hard to have imagined a better start, but they need to keep it going, and Big Ten play starts next weekend. So then the games really start to matter.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody, for putting up with us without Brian this week. And let's go beat Michigan State and Western Michigan, our two big in-state rivals.
Vodka, there's poison, he swear to stop. He's singing la da 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 la da 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 la da 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 da. Then one day Boris was visited by demons in his head, and they said, "Bring me Ruski vodka, or your son may soon be dead." So he went to the arena looking for